My name is Jess, and I'm a member of the congregation here at St. George's. A while back, I was listening to a podcast, and the title of it has really stuck with me. And the title was about being a non-anxious presence, about how as Christians we are called to being this non-anxious presence. Fear is everywhere. We live in a culture and environment where fear is not only rife, but in some cases encouraged by the media, social media, and governing bodies, to name a few. I think this has been particularly highlighted during this time of COVID. We also live in times where cases of anxiety in our world have never been higher. And I think this often stems from our need to be in control. We like to control our surroundings. We like to know what's coming next. We like to predict our future. Through the evolution of science and medicine, there is a desire to know and to understand, ultimately with the goal of keeping us from harm, to evade or postpone death. Which, when you look deeper at the root, comes back to this feeling of needing to be in control. Now, don't get me wrong, I love science, and I'm not at all saying that advances in medicine are bad. But when we try and control our surroundings and our future, we stop putting our trust in God. Because we start to think that that is it, that this is it. That there is no God coming to save us. There are no miracles. My dad has this wonderful phrase that he likes to use, that we are constantly being evangelized by our culture. Culture tells us consistently that there is no God, that we control our own destiny. And through the incessant noise of life, we can start to believe that. We see the disciples experience something quite similar in the story of Jesus calming the storm. Jesus is sleeping in the boat and a storm pops up. Now bear in mind, the sea, for the disciples, was quite a scary place. It was both a metaphor and a reality for them. Metaphorically, the sea denotes chaos, power, and immensity. And this is shown throughout the Old and the New Testament. In reality, the Sea of Galilee was quite a dangerous place. Storms were rolling out of nowhere. It was vast as a place. And they were not all seafaring people. For some, this was not their natural habitat. The disciples would associate the sea with chaos and with fear. In this story, the disciples are afraid, and they say to Jesus, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" This is what fear can do to us. We can say to God, "Don't you even care?" But Jesus responds first by calming the storm. He calms the situation. He calms the waves. And I'll come back to that in a bit. But then he says to the disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Now, I think this last sentence is incredibly challenging. Do you still have no faith? And I think there is a relationship between fear and faith. Often an increase in fear can impact our level of faith, and vice versa. When we have an increase in faith, this impacts our level of fear. Variations of "do not be afraid" appear in the Bible 365 times. So I think we can safely say that God doesn't want us to live in fear. Now, I know through my own struggles with anxiety that this is easier said than done. So how can we be a non-anxious presence? How can we radiate this peaceful, non-anxious presence in a world that is full of fear and anxiety? How can we trust God more and fear less? Well, the good news is that God promises to be with us. The first thing Jesus does in the story is he calms the storm. He calms chaos. He does care. He loves us immeasurably more than we can ever imagine. He will never leave us nor forsake us. In Isaiah, God says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you." And there's that water narrative again. Through the deep waters of fear, God is not leaving us on our own. He is with us. He is the ultimate non-anxious presence. And being this non-anxious presence will be a very, very different process for everyone. And I say process because it is something that will not just go away overnight. It will need some work. I think of a lot of the time, it's a choice, and maybe a daily choice. In the same way we can choose joy, we can also choose not to be afraid. Again, I'm not suggesting that that is easy. In some ways, it's a very natural human emotion to be afraid. For me, the way I deal with it is I like to run into what I call danger and just kind of head first, rip the plaster off, just go for it. My friends know to come to me for tough love. But for others, this will be really different. So how can we be a non-anxious presence in specific situations in our world today? With COVID, for example, yes, we absolutely need to be sensible and careful, but afraid? Climate change. Yes, we really need to steward our planet's resources wisely, but do we need to fear it? The future. A lot of us don't know what we're doing next year, maybe even next month. So how can we be a non-anxious presence in those situations? God does not call us to be afraid. So how can each one of us increase our trust in God in the full knowledge that he loves us irrespective of who we are and what we have done, and ultimately become this non-anxious presence within our community?